Well, I am going to open because I had a brief back and forth with our chair, Dave Nightingale. He is very sick today, which is why he's not there in the building. He's attending virtually to help us provide a quorum. Thank you, David, because that worked. Our vice chair, Chad Sutter, is away on spring break. So does anybody want to volunteer to chair for today? If nobody would like to, I can serve in that function today. So first I'll ask anyone want to volunteer for chair. I'm not seeing a lot of raised hands. So is there any objections to me acting as chair for today? Okay.
Good
Oh,
job.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So call to order. All right. So we're going. Roll call. So we'll start with the roll call. So David Nightingale, I know you are there. No, Chad Sutter is not here. Commissioner Klaus, present. Bob Eal from Port of Olympia.
Here.
Okay. Kelly Green from City of Olympia. I saw you there.
Hi there.
Nicholas Dunning, City of Lacey.
Here.
There we go. Joan Cathy from City
I'm
of
here.
Tumwater. Excellent. Trevor Palmer from City of Young. Okay. Lisa Harrison, our District 1
He's
resident.
in the room with us.
Oh, she is there. Oh, okay. Great. Jane Appling, District 5 resident. Here. Greg Schoenbachler, do not believe is here today. And Aaron Robertson, Industry for Disposal. Aaron is here. Christina Culberg, Washington State Department of Ecology. Did not see Christina. We still have 3 vacancies: City of Tenino, City of Rainier, and Town of Bucota. And I do believe the Town of Bucota will be on the board's agenda soon for renewal. They believe the mayor has recommended a person to be seated, but they're not on there yet. Okay, so we do have a quorum. Introduction of guests. I will start. I know this. I think I know. In the room there with y'all is first off we have Amanda Romero.
Good morning.
Laura Glover, who's running the show over there as well. I believe Rob Pudner is in the room as well with you.
Good morning, everyone.
Hope Springer
Hi.
and Maggie Brown.
Morning.
And those are all solid waste division step. And Tony Basinger, I think, is online.
Hey, everyone.
Let's see. I'm looking through to see if there's any other public works individuals. I don't believe so. Then we have other guests. Let me look through here. We have also from Public Works, Matt Samuelson.
Good morning.
And let's see, from Public Health, we have Kylie Graber.
Good morning.
And Jessica Goulet. And let's see, we have Josiah Close from HDR, who will be providing a presentation this morning for us. Back once again, kind of recapping the rate study and proposal for the rate increase for this upcoming for next year. And let's see, Ron Jones from City of Olympia.
Good morning, thank you.
And Sean Gilbertson, I am not familiar with where you're from.
All right, Port of Olympia Environmental, thanks.
Oh, okay, very good. Welcome. Is there anybody that I missed? Great. Okay. All right. Next up is I assume everybody received the agenda and the minutes from our March meeting. So first, for the agenda for the meeting of today, does anybody have any changes, edits, additions for today's agenda? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve agenda as published.
Second.
Motion approved and seconded. Any other discussion before we take a vote? Hearing none. Vote. All in favor of approving the motion to approve today's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, very good. Now, so the meeting minutes for our meeting of March 6th, 2025. Is there, anybody have any comments, edits, suggestions related to that? Last month's minutes?
Just have one edit, and that was at the last paragraph where it says the next meeting was April 2nd. Today is April 3rd, so I'm gonna change that date.
Okay, very good. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended with the date?
I'll move. Oh, second.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes for March 6th, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Very good, but those are approved. Is there any of the public here that would like to provide public comment? Okay, hearing none, that we have no specific old business in the new business, item 7. First off, our first item is a Hazel House reuse program update, and Laura Glover will be providing that for us.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen. All right, can you see the presentation? Okay, perfect. So this is just kind of a little update and announcement that we have began our Hazel House reuse program. The last time I spoke about this was in winter of last year. We were getting things all wrapped up. So I'll begin with what our timeline looked like. So we're now at that launch date right here, and we'll be continuing to analyze how the program is doing. We'll be tracking how much weight we are reusing or recycling within our own internal offices. And we will also be looking at what other products we can add and how we can maybe branch out the type of customers that we are going to be reaching out to for this program. So just to kind of give a little summary, our Hazel House reuse program is going to be targeted at nonprofit organizations. So they can go onto our county website for solid waste under the hazardous waste page, and they can apply there. All they have to do to apply is complete a liability waiver, receive staff verification from either me or Tony that they are good to go, and then they can make an appointment with our Hazel House staff to come and collect whatever items that we have available. This program is only going to be available seasonally, so it'll be April 1st through September 30th, Monday through Friday during normal business hours. And during that time frame, we will be closed on July 4th because that's just our normal holiday closure. So the requirements are right down there with the phone number for the Hazel House, and that's also a clickable link for our website if you want to see more of the information. This is just a view of what the website looks like and how to navigate to it. I actually had Hope help me clean up our hazardous waste page, make it a little bit prettier and easier to navigate. We also updated some information there. On the website, we've also created a couple of different waivers for people to fill out either in person or online. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that we've also included a survey and contact form. So any customer or any resident within Thurston County can fill out that contact form and reach out to staff directly. That way we can kind of track some of our other hazardous waste programs that we have going on. We've also partnered a little bit with environmental health to be able to give them some of our survey results so that they can also help customers where needed. And we are going to also include some rules and procedures. We have rules and procedures right now for our regular solid waste facilities that you can find on our publications and print resources page. But we intend to include the hazardous reuse program just to give a little bit more information that isn't directly listed on the hazardous waste website. And this is the type of material that we are seeing for the program. It's pretty basic. It's a lot of automotive products. So, you know, think cleaners, oils, a little bit of fuel or antifreeze here. And then we also have like a lot of household products like soaps and detergents, cleaners. I've seen house cleaner. So the eligible products will be ones that are in their original container with a legible label so they can be identified with at least 3/4 full or completely unopened. We do not want to give out any contaminated products, and we also don't want to give out any banned products. We're also hoping to have a little outreach where we go to a few nonprofits, maybe like animal rescues. We'll be giving them flyers and information so that if they want to use some of this material, they can come and pick it up for free. The limitation for the products is 10 per visit per day. So they would have to make an appointment every time they came to visit, but they do not have to fill out the liability waiver every single time they come to visit. You only have to fill it out one time. So that is our program and it's up and running. So if you know any interested nonprofits, send them to our hazardous waste page, or you can email me and I can give them additional information if they want it. So that's all I got. That's our program. I see Kelly.
Thanks. I just wanted to make a suggestion. There's a group in town called Southbound Partners for Philanthropy. And it's where a lot of the nonprofits have come together and they do shared training and conversations. So that might be a good group to reach out to where you just may be able to reach quite a few at once. And I think they meet at least monthly, if not weekly.
Okay, what did you say the name of that was?
South Sound Partners for Philanthropy.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'll definitely reach out. And I see Jessica.
Hi. I was just curious if there was a way to advertise the types of products that day that are available, because I was wondering, like the animal group you were talking about, and they made an appointment, but there was nothing that was applicable to them. That might be not like a waste of their time, you know? So is there a way to streamline that or make that more efficient?
I'm definitely gonna look into that, but for right now, it's been kind of inconsistent as to like the exact type of products that we're gonna get. We just kind of have a general category of things that we are seeing. And the intention of them calling in to make an appointment is to also ask, hey, what do you guys have right now? If, you know, save myself a trip so that I don't go there to, you know, receive nothing. So they can always ask our Hazo House attendants, and the Hazo House attendants are the ones who are selecting and going through the material to make sure that it's okay. So they'll know what's out there and what's available.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Yeah. Jane?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. First, why is there a time limitation on it? It's what, April to September?
Yeah, so we receive a lot of material, mostly in the sunny months, but during the fall and winter, things start to get a little bit ickier and the products aren't as great of quality. So it's mostly for the quality of the product. It's also to kind of assist the Hazo House staff. We have 3 staff members there. We want to make sure that they can properly handle the customers that they receive, both for regular disposal and then for the hazardous reuse program.
Okay.
Yeah.
So summertime is basically when people are cleaning out their garage and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
the stuff that we get during the fall and winter has a higher contamination. So
Interesting.
yeah, we just want to make sure that we're not giving people stuff that could potentially harm them.
Okay. The other thing I was thinking about was because nonprofits are probably not going to come looking to your website for, I mean, nobody will be expecting this or looking there probably. So I think people's ideas for outreach and contacting groups outside are really good. I wonder if you might be able to get some information at State Surplus.
Fair press.
where I think a lot of nonprofits go for cheap office equipment and supplies and things like that. They might find a referral there helpful.
Yeah, we're casting a really wide net here. We did
Sure.
post an advertisement on our Facebook page. We also hope to, yeah, just get into the community and kind of also gauge what nonprofits are looking to receive. If it's, you know, a specific type of item, maybe we could kind of focus more on trying to recycle that rather than dispose of it, maybe change the eligibility of certain products.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Did anybody else have any questions? Okay. Well, good
But
job. Oh,
I
yeah?
think Dave has a question in the chat.
Oh. Yeah, this is a pilot program to start, and we hope to make it a permanent program. So we're going to kind of use this first year, this first season, to just kind of gauge how the program is going. If it seems like it's pretty popular, we could definitely expand the timeline of it and the type of customers. We just wanted to start out small and not bite off more than we could chew, because we want to just see how people interact with the program to start. And yeah, for notifying nonprofits, we've looked, it's so hard to get a complete list of all the nonprofits in Thurston County. And when you do get a list, it's thousands. You have to really filter through them. It was just really extensive work. So we're hoping to advertise it in a few different places. We were talking about maybe doing a press release as well. I think just got chamber access. We're going to. And so we'll be putting that together a little bit more, building out more of the outreach as it goes.
Right now it's on our Facebook page and on the Hazo House website.
Mm-hmm.
And then there will also be some physical flyers that Laura's gonna hand out to nonprofits.
And please, by all means, if you are a representative in your community or a representative for your town or city, please go out if you know people and let them know. We would love to help them. And Joan.
Thank you. I wondered if you had contacted the Thurston County Food Bank. They now have what used to be at the YWCA called the Other Bank. And those are exactly the things that they helped people with. So you might have a chat with them and see how you could
Oh yeah,
connect this up or share collections or something, because that's what you're doing here is exactly the aim of the Other Bank. So
yeah. I'll reach out to them for sure. David just asked,
did you have another question? Yeah, that's your hand is still raised.
I see another question from David, and it says, will you be trying to quantify disposal cost savings? Not at this time. I'm going to just be tracking the weight that we are reusing or recycling. So that's going to be where we start. And then I'm hoping we can break it out a little bit further after that, but I just need to see how that data is going to come in and look first before we start quantifying the disposal cost. Yes, I agree. The weight will be helpful. I'm really excited about that part. All right. I think I don't see any more questions, so all good.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order on this topic from anybody? Okay. Thank you, Laura. All right. Next up on our agenda is a rate study review. Josiah Close from HGR. It's going to get, because we have some newer members on here, he's going to go ahead and give the recap as well. We go over the presentation as well. Let me frame this from the perspective of, he gave this presentation in February. We talked about it briefly in March for his questions. There weren't many questions at that time. Again, we have some newly seated members, so we're going to basically give a similar presentation just to go over the information. Our hope, and I don't know, so it'll be up to the committee to decide would be if the committee is willing to make a motion to move this forward to present to the Board of County Commissioners at a future date, if with the kind of the thumbs up, so to speak. So this is potentially an action item. Again, it'll be up to the committee to decide that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let Josiah give his presentation to kind of make sure everybody's up to speed with what's being proposed.
All right, thank you, Jeff. You see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're gonna, we'll be reviewing the information we shared in February. We'll look at the purpose of a rate study and why we want to conduct one for the solid waste utility. We'll look at the process that we go through to conduct the rate study. We'll look at the draft results as they're sitting now, and then talk about our next steps for the process. As Jeff mentioned, we'd like to move forward with this, and then open it up for some questions and discussion at the end. So overall, we want to make sure that we're providing sufficient revenue to cover our costs, and that's primarily the operations and maintenance expenses, which are our day-to-day costs for supplies, salaries and benefits, equipment, those kind of things. We also want to make sure that we're looking and considering our capital costs and funding those appropriately. And so those all wrap up into the rates, as well as looking at prudent financial planning criteria. So we'll look at that level of investment from cash. So in the rates that we charge, we want to make sure that we're reinvesting in the assets and equipment that we have. And then also making sure we're paying attention to our reserve funds. So making sure we have the reserves available for emergency situations, as well as cash flow requirements. And developing the study, we want to use generally accepted methodologies and approaches. So for water and wastewater utilities, we have industry manuals. The M1 manuals for water, it's from the American Water Works Association. And then for wastewater, we have the Manual of Practice number 27. So there is not a industry manual for solid waste utilities. However, what we do is we utilize the same approaches and methodologies for accumulating costs and then distributing those costs to the customer classes of service, as well as some of these prudent financial planning metrics to make sure that we can apply those to the solid waste utility, and it also works for other utilities as well. So some of the major influences on the study, the O&M and capital costs have been increasing, obviously, the last 3 to 5 years, a little more steady than before, but we haven't adjusted rates for the solid waste utility in over 12 years. And so that inflation has really been impacting the financials of the utility, and we'll see in a few slides our graphs, just that we are running a negative balance of funds, and so we do need to address that. We also have significant capital that is planned over the next 5 years. We're looking at just over $40 million over that period, and so we want to shore up that financial footing so that we can go into that period and make sure that we're covering our day-to-day costs, as well as contingency for those capital projects. So the rate study process is really 3 analyses that kind of build upon each other. We start out with the revenue requirement. That's where we compare our current rate revenue generation and miscellaneous revenues to our expenses. And expenses, again, we're looking at our O&M, or operations and maintenance expenses, as well as our capital improvement costs and any financial planning or key financial metrics that we need to fund as well, such as reserves. The cost of service then takes those costs, and we start to ask the question of why we're incurring those costs. For this utility, we are looking primarily at costs related to the tip fee and then related to the hazardous waste. And so we can start to go through the line item expenses of the utility, and start to distribute those costs into buckets and say, okay, why are we incurring this cost? Because ultimately we want to assess the proportionality of the rates that we're charging to the cost to provide service. And so that's what the cost of service analysis does. The third analysis called the rate design, and that's where we take the overall rate requirement or rate revenue requirement that we have, and we look at the proportionality from the cost of service, and then we can design rates to charge the customers. We can also include some policy considerations or goals and objectives as part of the rate design process, and we can start to incorporate those into the proposed solid waste rates. So some key assumptions within the revenue requirement. We started out with the customer billing data from the county, and we start to build a revenue generation profile. So looking at the quantities and weights of each of the different rates that you charge, and that helps us to determine what our revenues are. And we use that to also distribute costs within the cost of service. So we're basing it on the data that we're using in the revenue requirement to calculate revenues. We also use that same data in the rate design analysis to make sure that we're going to receive the rate revenues that we say we need. We started with the 2025 budget, and then we escalated that through 2034 based on some inflationary factors that we developed with staff. We utilized their current capital funding plan and developed a capital funding analysis where we identify the funding sources for each of the capital projects. And that's a mix of available cash on hand, annual contributions, etc. And that was about 1.4 million per year from 26 to 30. So again, a significant increase in the capital funding analysis over that time period that we'll see here. So this is a summary of those capital projects, and you can see based on the site relocation, we see an increase in capital projects. And then with the second transfer station location, that hits us in the out years here. So we do have some capital that we need to plan for, again, making sure we're paying attention to our cash flow annually, as well as our reserve levels, which we'll get to in a couple of slides. So for the revenue requirement results, this graphic shows us an accumulation of our expenses each year. So 2025, we're starting with our budgeted expenses for O&M. That's that dark gray box. We also have some taxes and transfers, so B&O and refuse tax, as well as our contribution to the construction reserve equipment and things like that. And you can see at the current rate levels, that's our dashed line. We're currently, I believe it's around $7 million short in 2025. And so we do have to dip into our reserves in order to fund that. Primarily, that's going towards the capital, but also a little bit on the operating side. So currently our operating expenses are higher than the revenue that we bring in. And you can see as we escalate costs out, so the dark gray box, that's increasing at our escalation factors. Again, each line item for salaries or benefits or materials and supplies, we escalate individually. We add in that taxes and transfers piece, and that increases as well in some years due to capital contributions, as well as we increase rates, we do have to increase our tax payments. And so that dark or the solid line is what we're proposing for rate revenues over the next, we're projecting it for 5 years, but we're really talking about 26 and 27. And that will help us to achieve the increase in the operating costs as well as those capital costs that we're planning to expend. So as I mentioned, reserves are playing a key part of this. So we have operating and construction related reserves available. And so we are using those to help smooth the impact to rates, but we are draining those down. We're trying to keep a target of 90 days of operating and maintenance expenses in the operating reserve. And again, that's primarily on the cash flow side of things. So the difference between when we expend funds and then when we recoup those funds is several months. And so we need to have cash on hand for that. The construction reserve, as part of the site reconfiguration, we're able to cash fund this project over the next several years. However, we do expend all of those construction reserves. And so part of the rate increases in the future would then be building those back up. And that's typical for utilities, right? We see peaks and valleys in capital costs. And so the reserves help us to weather those peaks and then make sure that we can transition rates as smoothly as possible. So in summary, based on the O&M increases, the capital funding on an annual basis, as well as replenishing those reserves, we're looking at, for the next 2 years, it'd be 13% overall increase in rate revenue. And when we get to the rate design, we'll see that breaks out a little bit differently within each category. But this is to say an overall, the whole piece of the pie is going to be 13% what we're proposing. And then thereafter, we're looking at more inflationary level adjustments.
Hey, Josiah, a couple slide back. We have a comment from David. It says it would be useful to talk about the post-closure fund is for and why it is going down over time.
Yeah, and Jeff, feel free to jump in too. But we have to have that available to take care of our obligation on the landfill, and so we do see those costs decreasing as part of the modeling over time, because our obligation technically goes away, but in reality doesn't ever really go away. So Jeff, I don't know if you have anything additional to that.
I think you kind of hit on on that point is that without technically that's correct. So the landfill closed in 2000, and our post-closure permit is from supposedly ends in 2030 because they always post-closure care is always 30 years after closure. That being said, you're never off the hook when you own an old closed landfill. I mean, even though by permit, it's like you have to deal with it. We're still going to have leachate to manage. We're still going to have landfill gas we have to manage. So there's still, and stormwater, all those things continue to go on, even though your post-closure care, in quotes, is for that 30-year period. We are the potentially responsible party for this property, and we are on the hook on it for essentially for life. So we'll need to continue to provide that ongoing maintenance and care.
Real quick question. Those funds after 2030, do those become available to use generally, like in a general fund type thing, or does that stay in that fund for post-closure? Is there any kind of...
It may reduce a little bit because there, as far as what we'll need to have, because after the 30 years, there might be some reductions in the amount of monitoring that we'll have to do for ecology, for example, and for public health. That because we have such a long track record, we may not have to do quite as many water samples or gas sampling. And so we're still gonna have to do some, but we may see some reduction in there that might free up a few dollars. As well as we're looking at the CIP as far as the capital improvements in this window. There's other, there's going to continue to be other improvements that'll need to happen as well. So we're going to continue to need to have, for example, one of the items that's not currently on our capital improvement plan has to do with Hazel House. Come 2030 or beyond is going to need some additional work. So and other things. So Rainier and we'll see depending what happens with the South County transfer station and that situation is there might be, if we built it at Rainier, for example, the Rochester site would still be open and would need work. So there's always going to be a continual need for capital improvements because of aging facilities. We're making a really big move here with the work reconfiguration project that's going to help us out. But even with that, for example, we're going to be building a new transfer station for the public cell phone. The existing transfer station is 25 years old and is going to need some substantive maintenance, such as resurfacing the tipping room floor that's in there right now. So again, as we continue forward, there's still going to be a substantive need for those types of funds to be able to manage our facilities. So that might free up a few dollars that could probably be moved towards our capital improvements, as well as any contractual changes in operations that might occur.
Thank you.
I see a couple extra questions from Kelly and Jane. Kelly, would you like to go?
Yeah, thank you. So if this is going to be addressed later in the presentation, please feel free to table it. But Jeff, you just mentioned a couple of, and they've been mentioned, those significant capital investments. And I looked through the rate study and I looked at the county's capital improvement plan, and I just don't see a lot of detail on those, and specifically like what kind of costs we're looking at for each project. Is there some, do you have any, I guess, kind of a more detailed outline of what those specific capital improvements are and what the costs are going to be for each?
I'll start with, I don't have anything obviously with us today. So for example, for the work reconfiguration, and we're talking about approximately 20 million for that, as well as purchasing an additional compactor for maybe another 2 million related to that. South County Transfer Station right now, which is out in that 2930 era, is at this point estimated at about $13 million, and then there's other maintenance type of issues that are in there. But there's as far as getting a table with our capital improvement plan, that's something we can send out.
Thank you. I would love to see that.
Certainly. Jane.
Yeah, my question was very related to Kelly's there. Just if you could send out something that describes the work reconfiguration project. I don't really know what's going on out there, but I don't want to use the group's time explaining that to me. So
yeah, I know we've had presentations on it previously, and we could probably, and we can send out additional information as far as that we've sent out to the group before.
Okay, or just a link to minutes or whatever.
Yeah, certainly.
I also though have and maybe this is part of that, but in the key assumptions document on page 7 of your program, Josiah, it says you assumed that your expenses would be based on the 2025 budget with inflationary factors, but based on current operations, no new transfer station or revised contract after work reconfiguration completed. Is that because you've already factored in the costs of operation after the work reconfiguration, for example? Or, is there any room in there for service and operation changes? Or are you locked into a current level of service through 2034?
I'll go ahead and jump on that one. This is the first piece of it. So what they're saying, so actually when this work reconfiguration happens, our contract with Republic Services for operation of that facility have to be a contract amendment, because there will be a change of scope for their work, because they'll be operating an additional building which requires additional equipment. We have no idea at this point in time what that will be. So it's not included in there. And I do want to mention that, because I haven't really touched on that yet here, is that our intent here will be to do, for the rate increases we're going to be looking at just for 26 and 27. And then at that point, we'll have better information. We'll reassess where we're at. And then we'll basically, put any change, we'll remodel where we're at as far as, if there's changes in contracts, for example. And then basically we'll be coming back because we're really going to ask because we're coming up to our next biennium for our budget. for 2026 and 2027. So we'll be preparing that. So our request for this rate approval will be for 26 and for 27. We're at that point reassess where we're at and make adjustments, because you noticed there was just inflationary beyond that. And then at that point, we'll make adjustments as needed if there's additional revenue required based upon contractual changes, for example.
Okay, so we might be looking at this at a study like this again in 2028.
In another 2 years, probably.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Hey, Laura, any other questions?
Don't see any other questions. You're good.
Right. So now we have the cost of service. So the cost of service then takes what we call the test year. So the first year of our projected period, 2026. And what we want to do is try to true up our rates, the proportionality between what we're charging customers for service and the costs that are incurred to provide service. So what we do is we go through the line item budget and the capital cost, funding, everything, and we identify what is driving those costs. And so we're looking at the requirements for the facility, equipment, staffing, and this is a snapshot in time. So we do, we want multiple costs of services before we make adjustments. And what you'll see, jumping to the results, when we look at this graph over to the right, our overall system is 13.5%. And typically we like to see results within plus or minus 5%. And that is based on, a significance factor essentially for, is there a significant difference between the cost to provide service based on what they're currently being charged? So this being one data point, and it being within that plus or minus 5% of the 13.5, we aren't recommending a disproportional increase in the hazardous waste at this point, because it is such a small difference there. So we've assumed an across the board adjustment for those rates. Now we do have some rate design changes or updates to the current schedule. However, the proportionality between the increases for hazardous waste and the tipping fee related costs are not changing at this point. So again, probably not in 2 years. The cost of services is updated more infrequently than you would do the whole study. But every 5 years, maybe you want to take a look at the whole cost to provide service and make sure that these rates aren't diverging further or faster. And so if that study showed us outside that plus or minus 5%, then maybe we would recommend changing those rates proportional to what's driving them, the cost to provide service.
David Nightingale is asking, is the hazardous waste fee only for the small number of small businesses using Hazo House, not residential customers?
Yeah,
that's correct, right? Josiah, that is the revenue that we are getting from the small businesses that use Hazos, the conditionally exempt small quantity generators that utilize that facility.
Yes, exactly. So it's very, it's 21,000 currently. So it's compared to 29, almost 30 million. It's a very small component.
I don't see any.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Laura. The rate design then is our final step in the rate study process. So we take the overall revenue need that we got out of the rate revenue requirement analysis, and we look at any proportional changes from the cost of service. Again, we didn't see anything that warranted that at this time. So we did have a couple of goals and objectives that we wanted to achieve through the proposed rates. So the general structure changes does not change. However, there was some slight alignments that we wanted to make. So for the biggest one for the tip fee for garbage was we're developing a non-tax rate for the waste haulers. So that is a little bit discounted from the tax rate. And so that is a new component of the rate structure.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Just I don't really understand what you mean by that. So
yeah. So the waste haulers, typically through that service, they'll be paying that refuse tax, and so the county doesn't pay. We don't want to pay twice on those taxes, and so there is a discount. It is we don't pay taxes for them. They handle that separately. So we're excluding them and kind of putting them in a separate category.
That makes sense, Jane. All right, so
More
right
or
now,
less.
currently is for the, we collect 3.6% solid waste tax that we have to pay to the state for every ton that comes across. We collect it from public self-haul as well as from Olympia and LeMay, the two commercial haulers. However, they pay directly that tax. So right now we're actually collecting that solid waste tax for those haulers, and they're paying it well. So we're it's getting double dipped. So this basically is, you'll see the non-tax rate is 3.6% less than the public rate because our rate includes that tax. That way they're not getting double dipped. So
I see. Okay, thank you.
We're making it so it's equitable. So they're not paying more. Essentially, they're paying more for their tons, which isn't really equitable. So
we have another comment from David in the chat, and it says, at some point, I would like to examine the potential of providing the impact of providing small businesses no fee Hazo House service, because so few businesses are using the service and they are essentially getting charged twice, once for solid waste and a second time for Hazo House.
Well, I'll go ahead and address that. We've had that discussion here internally, and it's very typical as well for other jurisdictions. For example, that I previously looked at is that the reason for, we are willing, and we do subsidize for residents here, not to help them do the right thing, but we're basically giving it free to businesses. We're subsidizing private businesses, and honestly, they're choosing, they can make decisions there, so that we're not comfortable with subsidizing businesses, because really that should be a cost of their business, is the materials that they purchase and dispose as part of their business, as part of their business plan. So we were not comfortable with subsidizing just certain businesses over others because they made maybe not as good decisions on the materials that they're buying and disposing. So we have had that conversation, Dave, and that's kind of not particularly comfortable with that one for that reason. So
no more comments.
Hey, and then on organics, so currently, again, we're under collecting as far as the cost to provide that service. So as part of the proposed rates, which we'll see here next, we're recommending that we jump that rate up in 2026 to cover the cost to provide service. As well as we looked at the density for organics compared to the garbage rate and other local utilities, and we'll have this chart as well. But that's more of around 70% for that rate based on the waste density and other local utilities. And so we're much lower. I think it's in the 40% range for organics. So we're trying to increase that over time to be more in line with both the waste generation, densities, as well as other local utility for organic. So you will see that in the proposed rates. And we also are transitioning to a uniform rate. So currently there is a tiered rate structure basically for less than 10 yards and over 10 yards. And so we're kind of simplifying that to be a uniform rate for regardless of size.
Why?
I'll jump in on this one a little bit. So currently, we charge $45 a ton for organics. Our costs are over $75 a ton. So we're taking a whipping on this. We're losing money on it substantially. So we have gone out and looked at a lot of our, the surrounding counties in Western Washington particularly, to see, where they were at on their organics, and we're way, way, way behind them. And I believe we even have a slide that shows some comparison a little bit later on. But basically, one, we have to at least minimally cover our costs. But you always want to have a price differential for organics from solid waste, because you want to incentivize people to separate their organics and for composting versus putting them in their garbage. So we want to maintain that. And the average of what we've seen out there, as Josiah had mentioned, is that people are having their organics tip rate being about 70% of what their solid waste rate is. And like I said, we're about 35 or 40% of that right now. We just way undercharged for that. We have been for a while. So trying to get into a better financial situation with that. And then the second one about the transit, having a uniform rate. I mean, a ton's a ton. I mean, how is this ton different than that ton? So, the costs are the same for us. So instead of having this bifurcated rates thing for these different types of tons, it's all one essentially. So
Why was it tiered in the first place?
it was basically kind of giving a larger haulers, it's like getting a bulk discount of sorts. I mean, that goes way back to 2012. I mean, when this was set up, so a long time ago, way before I was ever here. I'm not a big fan of that in the first place, but yeah, it was kind of giving them the basic. It's only people that had over 10 yards are typically on route curbside haulers, typically. Getting a kind of a special rate, but really the cost is the same for every ton that comes across. So it just made more sense. This is the opportunity to get that right. So we're again covering our costs and being a fairness, because again, as far as processing, composting, a ton's a ton.
Okay, thank you.
So looking at those proposed rates again, as Jeff mentioned, we're looking at the next 2 years to match up with the biennial budget for 26 and 27. So you'll see we're developing that non-tax rate. Currently, we're at $119 a ton for everyone. That would be 136 for the tax rate, and then 131 a ton for the non-tax rate in 2026. You'll also see under yard and garden, the organics, we're moving away from the two-tiered approach based on size of load, as well as covering those costs. So as Jeff mentioned, we're right around that $75 a ton is the cost to provide that service. So we're jumping up to reach that. And then we're increasing that over time again towards that 70% number of our tip fee, which is in line with other counties. And we'll look at that towards the end of the presentation. We'll be able to see that graphically. Most of the self-hauled customers are going to be in this minimum range, so less than 300 pounds. That rate is going up by $3 the first year and then $2 the next year. So the majority of those customers coming in, about 80%, are that self-hauled customer. And then of that 80%, over half is that minimum, so the $18. So a majority of those customers are going to see that $3 and $2 increase over the next couple years.
And their organics rate goes up as well, right? For the minimum
Yes.
load. Okay.
Yes, correct.
So
Yeah,
it
that
doubles in 2 years, right? Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Josiah, I've got a question. Nope, go forward too. That one. So given this scenario, as you all looked at your proposed rate increases, was there any consideration of increasing that self-haul base number a little higher than what it is?
I don't think, Jeff, that was one of them. One thing, and we did get into a lot of changes here, but what we're careful with in a rate study is changing too many things, especially with a 13% increase. So you know, I don't think we looked at changing that proportionality. It is increasing slightly higher than the 13.5% just because of rounding to whole numbers, but to push it even further above that, we didn't see any rationale for that. You know, it's that we kept the same relationship between the current minimum cost and the tip fee and the proposed.
And I'll jump in on that. So yeah, basically, again, you know, as we mentioned, we're keeping the proportionality and not weighting it. So, you know, raising the minimum for self-haul, then it becomes that then the public is then sort of, I don't want to say subsidizing a little bit, but that's not maybe not quite the right word. Would be subsidizing the on route haulers. So it's trying to keep that proportionality. So basically, where, you know, the cost to the system, and throughout, that was, as he's mentioned previous, the cost of the system from that subset of groups is proportional to their part of the whole pie. So versus having one side feel like they're subsidizing the other. Traditionally, I know in a lot of other locations, the commercial subsidizes residential in some ways, where they're charged more to give it cheaper prices for residential, but we didn't want to go that way either. So we were trying to keep it so it's proportional to the use of the system. So versus then, you know, adding, we did raise that, as you see, the minimums fees, and it's going to have a substantial impact on on overall revenue just as is. But we didn't want to, you know, go any higher to then weight it where the public is then sort of subsidizing the commercials. So that's kind of where our head was at, and the just behind what the rate schedule is.
We have another comment from David in the chat going back to Hazo House. He says, the pros and cons of providing no fee service to small businesses was not what I was suggesting. I was only suggesting providing the SWAC with a financial impact to the solid waste system and rates. Once we understand that, it would be useful for the SWAC then to discuss and evaluate the pros and cons of a policy to implement a no fee Hazo House option. No other comments.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can we'll think about that one, but likely, you know, maybe that's something we can look at, because we'll be doing this again probably in 2 years. You know, as we reassess, that's something we can look at probably at that time to see, get this one moving, get us in financial condition. I mean, as you see, it was only what, $21,000 out of a $30 million budget or something like that. So, you know, very $21,000 versus basically 30 million. So it's very minor. But that's I don't think we're ready to do that at this point in time, but it's a good question. It's something we can look to look at.
So then we just have the chart we've been mentioning. So if you look currently, $45, which is the more expensive rate, is what we compared to other you know, local outside of Snohomish County. I'm not sure what they're doing because it's pretty cheap up there, but these other counties were quite a bit lower. And then even with the bump to 75, again, as Jeff mentioned, we do want to be mindful of how close that relationship gets. However, when we looked at the rate differentials, we did see, you know, in that 70% range. So that's somewhere we're going to target. Again, looking at this in the future, obviously these counties will be increasing their rates over the next several years as well, just because and working in the industry, I know there are several of these that will be addressing that because costs are increasing, and so everybody has to keep pace with that. But even under the proposed rates jumping up here, so we do jump up towards Pierce and King, but again, based on trajectory, they're significantly above where Thurston County is for their tip fee.
And let me just chip in on the Snohomish County, which looks abnormally low. They actually had intended to raise their rates, or had hoped to raise their rates last year, but they were kept from doing it because it was an election year.
Oh, okay.
So they were asked not to do that. So they will be going up, and we've seen the numbers. I'm not going to say exactly what they are, but they'll be more in line with like our neighbor to the north. So that's so that'll change significantly. And as Josiah mentioned, I mean, we won't be alone in this just because of cost increases. I don't think we've mentioned it. Just like I should mention. So as you know, we haven't raised rates since 2012, and just straight up CPI during that period has been 40% between the last time we raised our rates and today. And we're only looking at, currently with this proposal, we're looking at, for the 2-year, it's about 27%. So we're not, even quite totally keeping up with the amount of CPI increase over that period of time, but this gets us where we need to be, at least minimally. So,
Jeff, I have a question on that. So can you give me some history on why that is? Were increases proposed in the past and not voted on, or why have we not increased in 12 years? It feels like we're about to make a really, really big jump when we should have been making smaller steps.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I've only been here 4 years. So why they didn't do that before, I don't know. I agreed. And a lot of utilities, I used to work for Marion County, Oregon, which is the Salem area, and they went 20 years without raising. And then they overdid it, to be honest with you. They thought, well, we're still doing okay. We're still doing okay. And because nobody, as you know, nobody likes rate increases. So they've held off. And I don't feel that's the really, right decision. But again, if you can get by, people are always reluctant to do that. But I see moving forward, I think at the very most ever going, maybe 4 years, possibly 5, out forward. I mean, at least like doing these studies much more frequently. I can't speak for my predecessors here, but agreed, it shouldn't be that long, because then when you do it, it's much more drastic, as you kind of said. So versus if you do it every couple of years, it's smaller numbers, people get less freaked out by it. I do also want to mention that we had we spoke with both the City of Olympia staff as well as LeMay staff, so the curbside haulers. I know the City of Olympia staff mentioned, because we wanted to have a comparison of what would this mean to a customer, a curbside customer. What would that mean on a monthly basis? So if you had garbage service out there. So for Olympia, they said for a 90-gallon container, that's picked up, I think every other week, it was going to be an increase of about $1.30, I think, a month or something. It's right around there. I have to go back and look at the exact figure. And with LeMay, they provided the same thing. And for like a 65-gallon every other week container, it was an increase of like $1.15 per month. So we wanted to kind of get, what does that impact? This is for people showing up at the transfer station. But what does that mean, to a customer that's getting serviced by the on-route haulers? So more or less, you're talking about in that, $1 plus or minus a little bit per month for your standard curbside customers, what that would mean. Jane.
That's what the 13.5% increase will look like. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we had them do those calculations just so we could have it. This puts it more into perspective, because curbside rates, first off, the solid waste disposal, which is one piece of it, is usually only about 30% of what makes up your rate. The other 70% is trucks, fuel, haulers, labor, the labor, gas, all that stuff makes up the majority of that cost. This is only an incremental. It's substantive, it's 30%, but what does that mean to people that are, that are going to get an increase in their weekly garbage or monthly garbage bill?
Okay. Yeah, that's really good information to have too, the proportion there. So
yes, what is the impact to the standard customer? Yeah.
I had the same question that Kelly had, is why has it been so long? And maybe you'll get to this later, Jeff, but I'm just curious what your pitch is going to be for this, fairly substantial increase all at once, especially given our budget situation right now. I mean, how are we going to sell that?
Well, the pitch is one, we haven't, CPI's gone up 40%. We haven't gotten anything new, and basically, as you saw the graph there, we're running in the negative right now. Just with what we've got, what we're doing right now. So we're running behind. Basically, it's to be able to operate the utility and make the needed capital improvements, as well as just increases in materials costs, labor costs, etc. That it's needed to basically continue on. I mean, we're required to provide this and needed to provide this service to the customers because it's a essential function. So I think we're keeping it as again, it's been too long, but keeping it in a reasonable level where we're not saying we want to raise it 40% to match that, but we're putting it to a level that we can at least meet our needs.
What happens
And-
if the commission doesn't approve it?
Then we continue to go red. And Kelly.
Thanks for entertaining all of my questions. There's so much I wonder about. So I know you're going to send us some follow-up information on those capital facilities improvements, which I'm really looking forward to going through. One question I have on it, and you can address it now or you can address it in those materials. The numbers that you're estimating around some of that, so the $20 million reconfiguration, are those like high end? Are those low end? Or given everything that's happening with the cost of everything right now, how confident are you that the numbers you're looking at for capital facilities improvements are accurate?
Well, for the further out ones are probably even fuzzier, obviously, just because who knows what can happen in the economy, et cetera. The work reconfiguration was based upon the basis of design that we had worked with, and that this committee has seen that was performed by HDR. So those are the only question is there were no tariffs and all that kind of thing that were in place at that time. So this adds a new wrinkle. So it's hard to say on that one, but that one's I'd say honed in a little bit better. Again, the South County transfer station one, again, that's further out, and as we get closer to it, we could there'll be there's actually a true basis of design, because right now it's conceptual, that one in particular. So but that's also far enough out that if as we look at it in a couple of years, and as we get closer and actually hone and get a true basis of design where you can actually get a much more reasonable cost estimate for that construction, that can be honed. But work reconfiguration, it's pretty darn close. It's pretty close in my opinion. But again, tariffs could throw that it could change that up. It's hard to say.
This is Matt. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, Matt, I can hear you.
Okay, good, thanks. With the work reconfiguration, because we're pursuing a design build option rather than design build or bid build project delivery, we'll basically, when we go out for the RFQ and the RFP process, for that contractor, we'll basically be setting the price that we are offering and then asking them to come forward to us with proposals on what they can deliver for that amount of money. So it's a little bit different, and we'll really find out in that process, how accurate that basis of design cost opinion was and how it may have been affected by inflation at that time, just based on the number of responses that we get. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Josiah.
Well, that's pretty much the content that we had. As Jeff mentioned, we're looking to move this forward to the Board of County Commissioners if everything looks good. And that would be to move to them in the next few months. And then with the proposed implementation January 1 of 2026 and incorporating that into the biennial budget. So I know we've run through questions here as we go, but if there's any more, we can entertain those now. And I will say on the capital as well, We did escalate that. I think it was about 3.5% a year. So we're trying to keep pace with inflation of costs on those. But again, with any scope changes or anything that happened from the original planning, that could impact those costs as well.
Any other question?
Yeah, just to verify, there's no other changes since the last briefing we got on this, correct?
Oh, as far as, yeah, so you're saying between the last time he was presented today, is that what you mean?
Yes, I presented to the council, so I just want to make sure in case there were,
Okay.
just verify there weren't any updates.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, the material is the same. The proposed, the rates are the same. So that hasn't changed since the February presentation. That's correct.
I have one more comment from David in the chat. It says, okay, we know enough about the minor revenue impact that the small businesses provide to the system. Essentially, that revenue is insignificant. So the SWAC does not need to wait for the next rate study to discuss a no fee small business policy at Hazo House at later SWAC meeting this year. I would suggest that staff find a slot to start that policy discussion this summer or fall. Thanks.
You're muted, Jeff.
I accidentally hit that button. Sorry. Sure. Yeah.
You said sure?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's all that I see in the chat.
Anything else? So my question to y'all is what is the feeling here? Is anybody interested or willing to make a motion to recommend that this move forward to the Board of County Commissioners for a briefing and their consideration?
I motion to recommend to move this to the Board of County Commissioners recommendation.
I'll second. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Prior to taking a vote, any other comments, questions?
David votes in favor.
And not hearing any, all in favor of the motion to move this forward to a briefing and to the Board of County Commissioners, the recommendation from the SWAC to move forward. I'll say aye.
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 Any opposed? Carries. All right. Thank you very much. It's this one's never hard. None of us like. I mean, I don't like bringing forward rate increases. Nobody does, and nobody likes to get them either. But unfortunately, it's a necessary evil. All right. Thank you all for your patience and consideration. I appreciate it. Manager's report. I guess that's me. So first off, I have a couple other updates too. I want to talk about, as you may or may not have known, the Waste and Recovery Center on Tuesday and Wednesday was closed to public vehicles. It was only open to the City of Olympia and LeMay for the commercial en route haulers. And that was because the compactor had been down in almost 2 weeks. What happened was on Monday, and we were getting by with not being able to compact, but top loading the waste out in the containers. But you can't move as much material when you're top loading. So we were starting to back up a little bit, but on Monday, the excavator that allows us to top load went down. So we were not able to move any waste. And that blew up with the building. Basically, the building just filled up. We were outside the building. It was not a pretty sight. So on Monday evening, we made that decision to go ahead. We still needed to be able to process the commercial vehicles, so Olympia and LeMay, because they have to have somewhere to go with that. But we closed down to the general public, so public self-haul for Tuesday and Wednesday. We are now During that time, because we had less waste coming in, they were actually able to get mostly caught back up all the waste back inside the building. They had some room to maneuver in the building, and we started we're back to business as usual as of today. So they are there. I had right before this meeting, they're currently working on the repair. The problem was we weren't able to get the repair tech who's on the East Coast here till today, as well as some of the parts. So I hear they're hopefully almost have it fixed. Knocking on wood here. I got some messages saying we're done, but it looks like it might be back. Compactor might be back up and running today. Again, fingers crossed, knock on wood. So anyway, we should be back to normal operations. We are taking everybody today. So I know just if you had heard anything, I know there's a story in the Olympian. I saw that. Of course, we are out in social media right away, as well as on the county with the various websites. So just wanted to update you on that. I don't know if anybody had any questions about that. You may or may not have heard about that if you weren't hauling waste, but we actually had our staff up the front gate that had to turn around a lot of people, because of course not everybody reads the paper, looks at social media, or looks at our website. So we did have a bunch of folks that would come out, and we had to turn them around. Even though we were closed for waste, we still accepted, organics were fine. We had a lot of people coming with organics. That wasn't affected. Hazard House wasn't affected, and recycling wasn't affected. It was just for public waste haulers for those 2 days. It turned out okay. Not something we like to do. That we never like to make it not available, but it just really, our hands were tied. We didn't have much of a choice. It's because there's no place else to put it, and we couldn't go any further without being in serious violation of our permits, which we're not okay with either. And public health is not okay with that. So, any questions about that one before I jump on to a couple other little fun highlights? Great. So as you know, we're hitting Earth Month. April is Earth Month. We have a lot of fun activities. And if you have any questions about them, I think the people that are going to be supporting those are in the room over there. First off, is we're going to have our second Fix-It Fair on Wednesday, April 16th. So that's actually got 2 weeks actually. April 16th from 2:30 to 6:30 at the Lacey Makerspace, which is at St. Martin's University. So we held one last fall. It was very successful. And so that was our pilot. So we are going to be doing that. I think Rob talked about it at the update last month, but just kind of wanted to remind people because we're a little bit closer to it now. So if we have even more volunteers, I understand, set to help people repair various items, and we have a large number of people that are pre-registered that are ready to come. So anyway, if you're so inspired, again, Wednesday, April 16th, 2:30 to 6:30 at Lacey Makerspace. If you have something you'd like to have repaired. They were very successful in the amount of items they were able to get repaired last time out. So this will be something that we are looking to do basically twice a year now, spring and fall. It's a great way to keep waste out of the waste stream. And and I think if any of you haven't seen the video that came from the last event, it's really amazing. You can go to our website, I believe, and watch that video. It's really cool. Yeah, so it was awesome. And Rob Pudner is our lead on that one. Next up is Earth Day celebration, which will be on Saturday, April 19th, so coming up as well, from 1 to 4 p.m. at the Woodland Creek Community Park on Pacific Avenue in Lacey. So I think, Hope, is there anything you want to say about what the things that are going on out there?
Oh, sure. For Earth Day, LeMay Pacific Disposal will be out there with a garbage truck, so folks can do touch a truck. So thanks, Aaron and LeMay, for having that available. And Intercity Transit will also be bringing a bus with, they attach some bubble blowers to it. So you can tour the bus, learn about, public transit, and also play in the bubbles, which will be fun. And then there's a variety of activities focused on waste reduction and recycling. So we as Thurston County Solid Waste will be doing make your own beeswax wraps with folks that show up to the event. And Pacific Shellfish Institute will be there doing some low waste games. Jessica from Public Health, I think, on the call will be helping with non-toxic household cleaners. So getting to make those to bring home and learn the process for that. Noxious Weeds from Public Works Department will be there planting native wildflowers. So we have folks from the county, from nonprofits, and Ridwell will also be there doing a plastic film collection for recycling. So that plastic film gets turned into decking material with a company called Trex. So that's also a really awesome opportunity to bring some of that plastic film and have it recycled for free at this event. Okay, Jessica won't be there, Jennifer will be there, but you can still get that non-toxic cleaner made. We're excited.
So put it on your calendars and come on down. It should be a good time. There's gonna be a lot of fun stuff there. Next up, other event that will happen on Wednesday, April 30th is a presentation. Can this be recycled? So people can come and ask their questions about recycling and kind of some of those oddball products that they have questions about. It'll be Wednesday, April 30th, 6 to 7 p.m. at Kennydale Park in the lodge there at Kennydale Park. If you haven't been there, it's a cool lodge. It's a beautiful park. And that's there off of Black Lake. It's basically on Black Lake. And last one is this will happen before our next meeting is the compost giveaway, which we did for the first time last year. And it's Saturday, May 3rd from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. out at the Park and Ride, the Hawks Prairie Park and Ride, which is over, it's basically at the work, different entrance, but it's in the large parking lot there. And Rob, do you want to talk briefly about this one?
We'll have 20 cubic yards of compost, finished compost that's been donated by Brady Trucking. And folks are invited to come if they work in Thurston County. There's a limit of 1/2 cubic yard of compost per vehicle. We won't be providing any kind of equipment or labor to load, so everyone's expected to self-load, so bring shovels and buckets and helpers. And we're expecting this event to be a lot busier than last year, and we ran out of compost by the end of the event last year, so we're recommending that folks arrive early. It's rain or shine. We'll be out there in the rain if it rains, just like last year.
And the Master Recycler Composter program will be hosting 2 compost workshops across the way at Closed Loop Park on the same day, around the same time frame too. So hopefully people can learn about compost and then come get some compost too.
Yep. And I think that's it for me. And anybody have any questions about any of that or?
David had a question about the compactor issue. He asked, is there a contingency agreement to send waste to Lewis County, Pierce County, or elsewhere locations in an emergency?
It has happened a couple of years ago where we had to actually totally shut down the work, which, again, we never want to do that. We have worked with Pacific Disposal and basically with LeMay, where they were taking some of their trucks, for example, from like Summit Lake or over there at near where you live, Laura. Shoot, no, I can't remember the name. Basically, the West County, they were taking some of that over to the transfer station in Grays Harbor. Some of their South County routes were going to Lewis. We've gotten the okay. Pierce County is pretty protective of their facilities. We have gotten the okay to take it there. We don't typically go there because they're incredibly expensive. They're like $173 a ton. That's just crazy, and it's a tough drive to get there as well. So it has happened. Typically, we haven't had to. It's been very rare that we've had to go that route. And the key for us is, again, of course, we want everybody to be able to dispose, but we absolutely positively have to service the folks with the en route because if you shut them off, they can't run their trucks, and where the heck are they going to go? So that is a priority for us. They all are, of course, but
I don't see any more questions in the chat.
Well, we got 3 more minutes. Does anybody have anything that they want to throw out there just for general consideration or announcements or anything like that? Good
I
crowd.
really
Good
have
crowd.
an incredibly silly question. I just presumed the work was open. Where does our waste go? I mean, I really didn't realize the landfill was closed. So when they come and so LeMay pays a fee for the amount of waste that they pick up and then where do they take it from there, or what happens next?
It's so garbage that comes, so whether it's a self-haul or from LeMay or Olympia, they bring that garbage to the waste and recovery center. It goes into our transfer station building where it's typically loaded into a compactor, or loaded into it's a 48 foot, I think, basically intermodal containers. Those get loaded onto trucks. It's hauled down to Centralia. There's an intermodal rail yard in Centralia where then those intermodal containers are loaded on, stacked too high onto train cars, and then that train goes down and then up the gorge to Roosevelt, which is well east of Goldendale. That's right along the Columbia River there, and then they get to Roosevelt. They're offloaded onto trucks that then drive up the hill about a mile or two to the Roosevelt landfill. It's a huge regional landfill. That's where a lot of waste here in Western Washington goes, the ones that use rail. There's another large, huge regional landfill just on the opposite side of the river in Oregon, called Columbia Ridge, that they receive also. I think they get a little bit of some Washington waste as well. I believe from the stuff north of us that Waste Management owns that one, the WM. And so they take, when they rail haul their waste from north of us, they would go to that landfill. So the majority, there's not many west side landfills anymore because of our rain and our moisture. And it's just, they're much more problematic. Most of the garbage tends to go east of the mountains because it's dry. The hydrogeology is way better. Groundwater's 1,000 feet down. So if you had a leak, it won't reach the water for 10,000s of years. So it all moves away. And that's always, you're right. That's always a big question. Garbage just goes away, but how does it do that? It's magic.
Thank you very much for the education. I appreciate it.
And for our
All right,
members,
it is 12:30. We are at time. Anything else for the good of the order? Otherwise, I'll let y'all go.
I was just gonna say for our newer SWAC members, if you're ever interested in a tour of our facilities, please let me know and I'll.
Absolutely. Yeah, just let us know. We would be happy to have you come out and we can show you around. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate all your attention and all your comments and questions and feedback. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.